First thing I do with the image I'm working from is to reproduce it in color on paper, or if I can find what I'm reproducing as a poster print, then I'll usually purchase a poster print. And at any rate, no matter how I go, but I did order a poster print for this Manet, but it was so blurry, it wasn't a very good image, so I sent it back and figured that I can work from what I found on the internet. What I'll do is spray mount that image to a piece of illustration board, and cover it with acetate, mark my grid, and then grid this off on the acetate, not on the image itself, because what I'll do later is remove this acetate so I don't have the lines in my way. I have just the image and not the lines. So I'll mark off my grid on the acetate and rule that off. I'll usually use a like an extra fine Sharpie, since that's permanent and really applies well to acetate. Or ballpoint works, except it creates depressions in the plastic. So once I have the grid drafted on my panel and the respective grid drafted on what I'm reproducing, I just simply reproduce what's in each square onto my original onto my panel. It's very simple. It's just reach and duplicate. Sometimes you can make your grid tighter or broader. In this case, I'm working pretty broad. I'll usually do the grid on my panel in 1-inch grids because I like to work tight, but there's so little information that I'm reproducing in these images that I really don't have to do that. So I'm eyeballing the spacing within the grid, within each little square. You know, I can see that this little thing is virtually halfway here and halfway there and a quarter below this and a little below that, but at least I have a very good idea of the relationship of all of these little parts to each other. So eventually when I'm done, and without having really spent too much time thinking about it, I will have reproduced this image. Now I've done some very detailed reproducing like this. Maxfield Parrish, I've done several Maxfield Parrishes. You know, that kind of detail really needs a tight grid. I've reproduced some Tamara de Lempicas, which in some places takes a tight grid, and in others, no. Frederick Remington, I've done. Michelangelo's. And others. So eventually what you end up with is almost like a paint by number. But the skill comes in the reproduction of the color, and in some cases brush strokes, and all the other little nuances that can happen along the way. That's the thrill of this kind of work for me, is really earnestly capturing all of that fine detail. Oops. I'm off. See? This is all over one too far. Sometimes you make mistakes. Luckily, all you need is a pink pearl. Now these panels have been gessoed and sanded, gessoed and sanded. We try again. Good part of the eventual illusion that happens when you graft something up. A great part of the success of that work is the correct placement of the detail. Sometimes the actualization of that detail can be fuzzy or maybe not exact. Depends on how detail-oriented you are and how patient and skillful you are at reproducing color and brush strokes. But the greatest, I have to admit, success of doing this kind of work is just the fact that all the details are actually in the correct place. So that really is the primary important aspect of this work, this kind of reproducing.